Happy today. I am William Brown from IamWilliamBrown.com. This is Disconnect to Connect, One Word Conversations. One Word Conversations is a self-discovery, relationship-building conversation designed to help you look at your language and how language can cause connection and disconnection. Many times we can come up with all the wonderful words that we can think of and still find ourselves in a place of disconnection, mainly because words don't just come with definitions. They come with stories, expectations, feelings, all those things that sometimes gets in the way. But the more that we're willing to have a one-word conversation, we can learn more about ourselves, the person that we're speaking with, and build on a relationship. Well, I don't know. I just had something go on in my hand. One Word Conversation is brought to you by IamWilliamBrown.com, a place to help you be yourself and live your life. One way I spotlight what's available there is our U cards. Our U cards are part of the Beyond the Shell series of books, cards, and journals, workbooks and journals. So the cards that I picked to set the intention for the show is I am seen, you are full of joy, and be you, the world will adjust. So this is the moment where I invite you to like, share, ask questions, comments, do what you can to let me know that you are also a part of this conversation. So today is another great day that I get to introduce our word live on screen with my guests. So as I do, I invite my guests in so we can have a conversation. Good morning.
Hey, how are you?
I am doing great. This is the moment where I invite my guests to introduce themselves, however it feels comfortable to them.
Yep. So my name's Roman Prokopruk. I am a first-generation immigrant from Ukraine. Immigrated in 1990 with 6 other family members to a 2-bedroom apartment. Interned with the Secret Service. Recession hit. Had to pivot into digital marketing. Have been in that field for 13 years. Founded an agency. Am a foster parent. So since June of 2018, my wife and I have fostered 25 children. That
Wow.
journey started going through experiencing 5 miscarriages in the last 3.5 years. I'm also a podcast host of the Digital Savage Experience podcast, and also launching with 2 other co-hosts on Monday, Real Talk Podcasting.
Wow. So you're not busy at all, huh? Right?
No, not at all.
So, this is the moment where I introduce our word for today. So, how does the word individual land for you?
Yeah, so that's interesting, because that's something that I guess throughout your life you have to go through. A lot of the time, me personally, have imposter syndrome, or seeing situations where like you want to be part of a group instead of have that individual identity,
Mm-hmm.
and just having your own kind of life path in terms of making what you make out of situations. So like I said earlier, I thought I was going to go the criminal justice route, but out of necessity, I took it upon myself out of need to do something completely different, and kind of put that on my back, I guess. So for me, I guess being an individual is having that kind of grit, and not necessarily something to prove to other people, but to myself, based on,
Right.
where I was born. I was born in a communist country and came over here. So I kind of value, the freedoms we have in terms of religious freedom, the economy, things of that nature, and just kind of deciding your own path, both personally and professionally. And like I mentioned earlier, I think it's all about making the decisions that are right for you. They may not
Right.
seem right at the time, but I think as human nature, it's a you versus you battle. So I think that ties into an individual.
Right.
So you have to get out of your own head in terms of probably 9 times out of 10 in my situation experiencing something that turned out to be great.
Right. Yeah, I totally get it. There is this for me the search of the individual. The Dr. Seuss. There's no one youer than you. Right. Really embracing who I am, and how my purpose shows up within that. Um, it's like an easy, and it's a challenge, because like you were saying, that we are a part of a collective, we are part of a group, we are I have a conversation around labels, right? Our labels, um how we show up, right? Black, male, American, whatever label that we put on, there are ways that we show up that way. And sometimes when we show up that way, we lose ourselves, right? Because we want to fit in and belong. And so, really embracing the individual, and also being available to the collective, I think that's the work.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it can be, like you said, also like positive and negative. So for me, like I consider myself, fairly intelligent. I can pick up concepts really quickly. So in school, I moved from elementary school into middle school, first year of middle school, and I didn't know anybody because everybody was transitioning to that school and they knew from that
Right,
town. So in fifth grade, like people don't necessarily, like peers look at you like when you're like super smart, like, want to be friends with you. They think you're a nerd or whatever. So
right.
I theoretically dump myself down just so
Hmm.
I can like be more on a level and not show that I'm like, oh, this kind of bookworm. So like there's that
Right.
situation where you try to conform, I guess, to fit in, and then kind of lose that individuality to a
Right.
certain extent. And I mean, I found that after the fact, I'm like, why am I doing this? Like maybe a year or two
Right.
later, and then just started getting good grades and stuff like that, and valuing my education because one, uh, I was just conforming to like a group mindset, and two, I know what my parents, grandparents, and other family members that I came over here, what they were coming from for us to get here in order
Right.
to like make something of ourselves, and I shouldn't be squandering like opportunity like that.
Right. It's like you've gone through too much to not to be yourself, right? I mean, it's like you it's like we want this freedom, we want this, we want to be seen, right? As Descartes, but we're not showing up as ourselves because we want to belong, right? What are we more committed to? Being ourselves, being the individual, our within our uniqueness, are like having someone to play Xbox with, or PS2, or whatever, whatever it is. It's that I have a conversation around um, self discovery, self awareness, and doing that, and I say that we are on this self discovery journey alone with others, and the more that we embrace that, there's only one of us. And the only way that people can see the individual of who we are is to show up as that. And, there are some days where that is, empowering, right? I'm going to be me today, right? And I'm going to be out there. And there's some days that is, I'll speak for myself. It's very lonely. And then we do things like you were saying earlier, that we dumb ourselves down, or we minimize ourselves, or to kind of fit in, just so we're not alone, or feel that we're alone.
Yeah, and like I said before, I mean, I think across my life in certain points, I had to kind of step back and recalibrate that. Am I truly like, doing what I love and showing who I am? Or in that situation, am I conforming to some kind of, group mindset just to, have
Right.
friends or people say, oh, yeah, he thinks the same way or he has the same hobbies or whatever that I may not even be interested in. It's one of those things where I think you constantly have to take a step back and recalibrate, because
Right.
obviously certain things happen in life, different, milestones, different things you go through, and sometimes traumatic things that you may, in terms of a grieving process, you lean on a group, and maybe
Right.
they're there for you more if you conform to them in a certain way, or
Right.
take a part of you away in a way. So it's like important, I think, across your life to maybe, every so on, I don't know, maybe 6 months, a year, or whatever, something traumatic happens, and really reevaluating that and looking at it as this, like, am I truly like expressing or being who I am, or am I, part of this whole like hive mindset now that I need to
Right.
maybe step back from.
Right. I wanted to bring in, from your introduction, of you're fostering 25, children. How does individual show up there? I mean, because you have, I'm sure there's so many, um, personalities and experiences and life in there. And it's like, the consistent thing I would think is you and your wife's love for children, right? And really embracing, that calling, on your life, but really being there with, all those individuals in that. How does that show up?
Yeah, so like you said, I think the thing that we can offer as a constant is love and a safe place for them to spend if they're with us for a weekend or a year, or maybe possibly end up in a situation where, we adopt them.
Right.
So that constant, I guess, is that love and that safe space that they can really heal. But like you said, each of those cases and each of those children are individuals in the sense that what they've been through and what they need to cope or heal. So some of these kids are, 2, 3, 4 years old, but they've been through more traumatic things than most adults will in their life. So you
Mm.
really have to see, a child sometimes is dropped off. They're literally taken from whoever their guardian is in the middle of the night, and they drop them off at our doorstep, dirty, hungry, just with a trash bag of like a dirty stuffed animal and one
Right.
pair of clothes, maybe. So it's
Right.
like really being there, making them feel safe, and then learning about what makes them tick. Because
Right.
I mean, I'm looking at from perspective of foster dad. I mean, haven't had biological kids yet, but it's one of those things where like you have to catch up. You have to figure out what makes that child tick and what's happened to them and how it affects them,
Right.
physically, mentally, emotionally, and try to create a healing space unique to each situation, because obviously each child may resonate with something, may be triggered with something that brings them back to that memory where they
Right.
saw abuse, were abused, were neglected. So it's like that individuality is a case to case basis where you really need to observe and be there in the way that child needs you to be there for them.
Right. And it's what's coming up for me. It's like it's hard and it's not hard. Um, and but I'm sure that there were um it feels like there is a feeling that, okay, this is what we're meant to do. We are able to handle this and deal with this. I had a guest yesterday share that, there was something, the saying that, God doesn't give us more than we can handle. And she was like, well, that's what she has embraced, or by, I guess, a mentor of her, that, God gives us a little bit more than we can handle. And it's in that gap is where the pain is, right? Or the growth area, or, or something that is calling us to be greater in something. And I can just see as showing up as individuals and basically fostering individuals and really kind of nurturing individuals. I'm sure there's some gaps within that.
Yeah, and healing and maybe being there, because a lot of these children are coming from situations where they've never known their father, so they have no male role models. So
Mm,
if they do end up going back, at least for a short time, showing them that, men can act a certain different way than what they're used to in their lives.
mm,
And one of those things that, like, being a change in the system, because in terms of statistics, I didn't even know that until a few months ago when I looked into it. I believe 60% of incarcerated males in the United States have been in the foster care system at one point or another.
wow.
So they're either being, thrown in, not getting the services they need, passed around from house to house. I post a lot of content on TikTok about my experiences through foster care. And some people like said, I was a foster child. I was in the system till I aged out. And I was at like 55 foster homes. So how is that showing that child like, stability or love when they're just passed around like they're useless from one house to house? So there's
Right.
situations like that. And then those things, stay with you regardless. I mean, I've talked to a lot of children that are now adults that were, in foster homes and in the foster care system, and that stays with them and impacts relationships and how they see the world. And statistically, also, when a child ages out of the foster care system, meaning, parental rights were terminated and they were in a system and they didn't get adopted. So basically, the
Right.
state was their ward until they turned to be an adult, and then they go on off their own. They have like a 55 or 60% chance higher to end up on drugs, human trafficked in gangs, or other
Right.
situations that oftentimes it's hard for them to get out of.
Right. And I think I saw something a number of years ago that a high percentage of, the homelessness community is foster, people from the foster care because, like you were saying, that aging out, right? And then it's like, hey, now we're no longer, the state is no longer responsible for you. And, you know, congratulations, you're you're an adult. It's like, what? And just kind of go from there.
Yeah, that individuality plays into that kind of situation as well, because oftentimes the children are treated like their case number, not as an individual, not as their
Wow.
name, not as what they've been through, but hey, this is the case. Let's push this case through. Let's get a high, reunification rate, regardless of giving them the service that they need or the situation that they're going back to is safe or not. So
Right.
there's that kind of side of it as well.
Is there, look, without talking about, I don't want to soapbox about the government or how, horrible what you just said sounds, because I don't think there's like horrible people. For me, it's like sometimes there's horrible systems, right? We've create things that really are not in support of each other and the individual. What do you think is, um, I don't want to say what needs to be changed. We can see in some cases what needs to be changed, but what do you think that makes that acceptable to not really see, these children or these people as individuals, but as cases, right?
Well, one is the environment that those workers and those agencies work in. So they become desensitized over time. Obviously, they're on a government pay scale. Their
Right.
caseloads are overloaded. Sometimes they, can't adequately, process or adhere to or look at a case. So situations like that. But I oftentimes speak about, foster care reform and making holistic changes. It's different state to state in terms of
Right.
policy.
Right.
New Jersey, it's reunification really over everything. So since the new, I guess, commissioner took over literally in 2018, she's been pushing this kind of model where they want majority of kids in the foster care system with family, other family, or into a kinship care where it's still family or friends, somebody that they know. But the situation there is that situation may not be the best because this may be
Right.
a generational issues where abuse has existed from a grandparent to a parent to a child, and there's more things there that, like the word individual, we have to deal on an individual level and
Right.
treat all these people involved in the situation. But simply throwing the child back offers a high recidivism rate and
Right.
situations where it's unsafe for the child and isn't necessarily the best interest of the child, in my opinion.
Right. And it's like, what are we really in service to? Right. Just it's like sometimes when I do things, right, it's like I'm cleaning my plate. And sometimes, I'm just um I clean it so well that I don't even realize what I had on there, right? And it's like when there's people involved, when there's individuals, when there's lives involved, there it feels like there needs to be a little bit more care to that. Um, yeah, it's like, I got into the coaching and around self-awareness because it's like my heart aches because I believe there's a belief that I have that many of us are not living our life. We're living somebody else's life. We're living somebody else's expectations, fears, disappointments, and all that. And I believe the more that we become aware of our life, our individual life, then we can show up fully in the world. Then we can, I guess have a go at it. And as you're speaking, it just feels like there is so much of of us that we don't have an awareness of the individual, right? We don't have an awareness of our individual life, right? Of how we are to show up, and then we create systems and we create programs to quote unquote support people that really are not supporting people and individuals, because we really don't know what that means. And so it's like, how can we break, you talk about reform, how can we break that? How can we get people aware of themselves so they can be aware of others on a level that will make a difference?
Yeah, and it's like individualizing the actual measures that each case is looked at instead of having like a wide rule or law,
Right,
for a specific state or a specific county where each case gets treated like this. But like I said, each child is different, completely
right,
different than 25 children we had, situations that they were taken out of, situation in terms of what those parents are doing or not doing to get them back, what's changed in the there's so many variables involved that you have to treat each case on an individual
right,
basis and look at it from the what's best in the best interest of the child, not let's pad a number and we have the best national reunification rate in the country. But what does that really look like?
right,
What are the
me, right,
people behind that? What are people going through? And in terms of that number, eventually, like there's going to be something that comes out that you're pushing kids into situations that are unsafe. And unfortunately, negative things may happen.
right. It's kind of, as business owners, when I'm thinking of individuals, it's almost comes up in my, sad to say, how I treat my customers. It's like I put them all in they're individuals that are dealing with stuff, right? They're dealing with things, but but there is this feeling with me in my coaching. It's very customized. There are some things that I kind of areas that I talk about. I talk about how people show up in their work, how their relationships, and at home. Under that, but outside of that, it's customized to the individual. But sometimes it gets very, there's a feeling in the back of my mind is that if I really focus on the individual, that can get very costly. There's and I think, do you think that there is a mentality that, um if I focus on the individual, it's going to cost me too much money. It's going to cost me too much time. It's going to cost me too much. So I rather just, not really see the individual in this.
In, I mean, I think everything is an investment in life. So into people,
Right,
into time, into making people see some of the things that they may be doing or not doing. But and I think in terms of the foster care system, you're in a disadvantage if you don't view it as an investment on an individual basis. Because, like I said, obviously, when 60% of people incarcerated have been in the foster care system,
right,
that experience hasn't helped them or motivated
right,
them to take a different road or
right,
route in their life. So why not invest that and create productive, people that are healing and coping and dealing with the pain that they've experienced and channeling into something positive and being
right,
positive and kind of reform members of society where they're giving back and then maybe mentoring people that have been through similar situations, speaking up,
right,
being entrepreneurs, and really adding impact to the overall conversation in the nation itself. Then you know just throwing them out there, they have no hope. Like you said,
right,
some of them are homeless, some of them are drugs, some of them are in gangs, and then they get incarcerated. And there's less hope there, because obviously,
Right.
even if you're locked up, the recidivism rate is high, because they're not necessarily about, reforming or healing or dealing with your problems. It's like they say, a criminal becomes a better criminal when they get incarcerated, because they kind of like
Right.
network with other criminals and they learn
Right,
other
right.
things.
It's like this. What did you do? It's not to kind of help people kind of own up their stuff. It's like, hey, all right. Now I know that there's another way to kind of operate. Look, I'm trying to think of answers here, and I'm not saying that you would. I'm not going to put you on the spot and try to say, okay, maybe within this conversation we can solve all the problems within foster care. But the question that keeps on coming up for me is why is why are those numbers or that outcome acceptable? How can you look at a report and see that 60% of foster care people that come through foster care end up in prison, and there isn't like an alarm that goes off and say, we need to do something different. This is not acceptable.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you start throwing politics and stuff like that, that's when it gets muddy. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not necessarily the best talking point to get votes. Obviously,
Right.
those members in many states don't get voting rights in terms of having
Mm,
a felony and don't get back that. Some after a certain amount of time when you're, off parole and stuff, you can get your voting rights back. But
right.
there's no impact in elections in terms of that, or putting money into that it would favor those policymakers in one way or another, because unfortunately on both sides of the aisle, I
Right.
think things are fluffed, and government and Republicans, Democrats and the like, take care of the constituents that put them in there, donors, people like that, lobbyists.
Right.
They don't necessarily look at the problem, because if it's not
Right.
profitable, or if it doesn't add votes or keep them in power, in my opinion, it's
Right.
not an issue. And if it's not in their life, like if they're living behind gated communities and in country clubs, it's not impacting them. So why should they care? I'm not saying not every politician cares, but I feel like
Right.
a lot of them have this kind of mindset that there's a lot of stuff in this nation that's just brushed, under the rug, and hopefully it goes away by itself, but no money or, you know, uh, limelight is put on it. So, I mean, I try to do as many interviews as possible to kind of bring light and
Right.
possibly move to some kind of, reform.
Right. I think the one thing that is showing up for me, I don't know if it's my black label, or because I talk about labels, right? Is that there are a number of things that people are aware of. It's not like new. I commend you for all the conversations that you're having around reform and just letting people know about what's going on with foster children and just the whole system of foster care, um, which it seems kind of crazy. You're not caring for. I mean, you're caring and not caring. That's how it's showing up for me. That individual, but there is this sense that it has to be. It's we can't educate ourselves to do better for each other, right? Because there's a lot, like I said, in my opinion, there's a lot of this information that is available. The fact that there's a study, you know, the fact that we can count a percentage of people that are that are incarcerated, that are from the system, right? The fact that we can count and that we have counted that the large number of the people that are living on the streets have been in the system is that knowing. And so until we really embrace, I, I want to say the individual truly. I mean, because I said, I say things. There's some things that I totally agree with, and some things that I not yet agree with, right? Or believe. But I said one day that in order for us to take care of the children, we have to first take care of the child. And I think it's what I was speaking to in that moment is really seeing the individual child's needs. We can have this blanket, overreaching, oh, yeah, we're going to take care of the children. But if we really don't understand what a child, that child needs, every individual child needs, we miss the children. We're not helping. And I think that's how it's showing up for me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a big pain point in the process is right before a child gets reunified. There's no therapeutic services to address some of the things that child may be feeling or emotions that are kind of reliving from situations that they've been in. Because
Right.
right before reunification, a child usually has at home overnight visits. So they're
Mhm.
usually taken to the place where that trauma happened, which usually triggers
Right.
things in people in terms of those memories and then different
Right.
behavior. So we've advocated in numerous cases that, we need individual therapy to address what's going on in terms of situations when the child starts at home overnights and is
Right.
close to reunification. Then we want the parent or guardian that the child was taken from to have individual services to help them kind of get acclimated, because in most cases they haven't had that child full time for a year. So they have
Right.
to really kind of like come to terms with being a full-time parent again. And then once that's going on in that process, have group therapy where that dynamic is looked at and seeing how they're interacting. So we advocate and try to push for that as much as possible, because I think that's a major bottleneck and pain point why a lot of reunifications fail.
Right. The one thing that came up when you were sharing that is that it's like as human beings, we're very adaptable, right? And that can be the bad news, that especially when we're in an abusive or a not rewarding environment, we like adapt to survive. And however long that they have been with you, or other foster parents, they've adapted to that. And now this great idea, you know, reunification, that's great. Everybody wants, I am a person that believes in reconciliation. I believe that I am called, a part of my life is to reconcile people that feel that they have been wronged or disenfranchised and everything, and just stay in conversations of reconciliation. So I totally get it. But within the conversation of reconciliation or reunification, like you said, it's not just because I don't want to reconcile just because it's a good idea. I don't want to reunify just because it's a good idea. It's because it's important to the individual, to the people involved, the human beings that's in support of our humanity. That's why we're reconciling. That's why we're coming back together. And if you don't have those conversations, that therapy, that really understanding, not just coping, you know, I don't think a therapist would say, "Hey, we're going to send you back to your parents. I know they're probably still drinking, but this is what you need to deal." I don't think they do that type of stuff, but it kind of feels like we do coping instead of really healing, type of thing.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that focus is like, oh, this situation is good enough, it's safe enough. It's not like diving down to the root of the problem and
Right.
fixing it, so then that can, statistically work. Because we're all in favor of, reunifying. We've actually been resources for situations where the children have been reunified in terms of helping uh, bio parents or guardians get back on their feet, or if they need like winter clothing or food or anything in
Right.
terms of some kind of support, a ride, come over for dinner, no questions asked. But I am not in favor, like the conversation we're having, reunification over everything. Like
Right.
when it's just to do it, to maybe pad a
Right.
statistic or a number to look like the best state in the
Right.
nation for that reunification numbers, like that's not the right intent. Like you have to have the right kind of starting point behind that and do it for the right reason.
Right. And so where is the individual in all of that and all of this? I think you mentioned before that, sometimes within the group, right? That, we lose ourselves in the group think, and the belonging. It's like that's foster children, that label, you know, um, that's a hard. How can that mean something, right? How can that empower them to show up fully in their life? I think that's what I'm looking to kind of help. And I think you're doing it by creating those spaces, but it's kind of you can do the work that you're doing, right? Awareness is a key, right? It's not the answer. So there is so much. My wife wanted me to ask this, and I want to bring it in, and um I don't know why I feel like I know to do this. Is that how can you how can you do it? She said it's very difficult to get so attached and for so much love, and all the problems that are gone in the system. How can you allow someone that you've poured that time into go, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it's like being an emotional like masochist, honestly, because you know it's coming. You know that pain is coming every single time, regardless if that child's
right,
been with you for a
right.
weekend or a year. And more so, it's that like I forget what the name of the loss is called. It's a specific loss, and there's a specific grieving pattern for
Hmm.
specifically when it's like, somebody that hasn't passed away, but most likely than not you won't see and be part of your lives.
Wow.
And it set us up like our first case. So we got licensed May 31st of 2018. June 1st, the next day, we had two children dropped off, brothers.
Wow.
And it was positioned like, hey, this case is moving towards termination of parental rights. You're going to be able to adopt them. We had them for a year. So they were calling us mom and
Wow.
dad. We were taking them to like Disney World all over the country,
Right.
having good experiences, showing them, doing stuff with them and things of that nature. And then, we got 3 days notice that they were going to be reunified. And it was one of those things. It was difficult. It was on
Wow.
par with the miscarriages, because the miscarriages, we know, they're in a better place with, a
Right.
child that you have no control over in terms of them being reunified. And then whatever else happens to them, more so it's, really being concerned about their safety. Are they taken care of? Are they in a good place? Are they getting what they need? So, we really looked within ourselves and took like a month and a half break, went to Hawaii for a family reunion. So really took time to get closer as a couple and really see if this is what we should be doing, and
Right.
kind of eased right back into it. And we saw that, if we're not doing that and treating the children, with the way that they need to be treated in terms of a safe space, in terms of a place to heal, that's one
Right.
less good home. So they may end up at a
Right.
place where they have a negative experience, and then they will become that statistic. So
Right.
I felt like, I'm an adult, I can take that to a certain extent. Obviously it's not healthy, so I have to deal with it in one way or another,
Right.
but the child themselves have been through more so than most adults, and they're kind of like getting to a point where they can smile or act like children, so why not me? So it's one of those things.
Right. Wow. Now no, I totally get that. But uh it's like a year. It's like, oh my God, 3 days. Oh, oh, good. I mean, like I said, it's been so many years ago, and I'm sure it's still like it's like yesterday for you, right? Some, but it is really, um, yeah. I think I just want to acknowledge you and your wife for for how you're showing up in the world. You've embraced this life, through tragedy and a lot of difficulty within your life, and that there is still love to share. There's still guidance. There is still, um, um, a sense. No, there's still purpose. It's not a sense of purpose. There's still purpose in everything you do. So I don't know. I just feel, I don't know who am I, but I just want to acknowledge you for that. This has been incredible. I think we can talk about this for hours. However, I feel that there's a part of this day that is just calling me, and so I just want to honor that. But is there anything that you want to leave everybody with, about the system, about just individual, just, how the word showed up for you, and, was it surprising, or did it feel connected to, so what's going on for you right now? And just whatever you want to share, I'm open for that.
Yeah, I mean, it made me relook at how as I was an individual throughout different parts of my life, and kind of going back to them and seeing how myself as an individual can impact, or you can make an impact as one person. So me
Mm,
not thinking what I can do. If you look back, if you asked me 4 years ago, would you be a foster parent? I would like probably laugh in that person's face. And then
right.
if they asked me after the fact, at this point in 3 years that you fostered 25 children, like that's crazy, or have had 6 children at once. Well, no, that's ridiculous. What are you talking about? So I think
Right.
a person as an individual kind of really second guesses themselves, and in terms of a place of preservations, because humans are a creature of habit, so they don't
Hmm.
want to get out of their comfort zone. But I see like doing that and making that initial leap from the mindset of it's a you versus you battle. So regardless how many people tell you to do something, you have to as an individual take that action. And once you
Right.
get into that chaotic place where uncertainty, things are not comfortable, that's I think truly a lot of the time where a lot of that magic happens, in terms of different discovery, in terms of business goals, personal goals, and different things that you impact people as well.
Right. Wow. Well, thank you very much. This has been great. Very insightful. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It was encouraging. I mean, it was like, I guess all the feels. It's like, I want to like do something, and like, it's like, and just, I don't know. Look, the card that I picked is like, be you, the world will adjust. So, I guess, as we are ourselves, we're changing the world. We're changing the world. Thank you very much, Roman.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh boy. Yeah, this has been a great conversation. The individual, how can you show up as yourself and still be there for other people? It's like there's what's coming up. It's like we don't need each other and we do need each other at the same time. And just really how much we can embrace that. How we can embrace that we are here for a reason and a purpose. And that is us. We are purpose. I hope this conversation has brought value to you, and I hope not just to your day, but to your life. I invite you to reach out to me at IamWilliamBrown.com, a place to help you be yourself and live your life. For a complimentary coaching session, there's a number of different coaching opportunities, some workbooks, um, and the Beyond the Shell book series. Because the world wants you, the world needs you, but the world isn't waiting for you. So go be you. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you tomorrow on One Word Conversations.